secret is I just smile and say, follow me. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Life's too short not to really live. I got a big heart, I can let you in. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world.
Hi there, welcome back to Toxic Bliss, Surviving Narcissism with me, Eamon Reese. In the last episode, I had kicked Mike out once I had discovered his collection of internet girlfriends and his plans to go to spend a weekend with one of them. It felt good to do that. I felt strong and fearless. I knew I could survive just fine without him, so there wasn't any hesitation at all. I did a lot of introspection during this time and realized that I could tolerate a lot of Mike's crap, but not that. That was a line that I would not let him cross. His lies, his funny money games, his angry outbursts. I could deal with those things, but having a harem of online girlfriends? Hell no. That wasn't going to happen. I felt confident and powerful after kicking him out. I actually did have boundaries. Yay! They weren't as strong as they should be, but at least they were there, and that was good news. I had a long talk with Maggie when she came home from school that day and she found him gone. I explained that he had left and that it was okay. I was okay, and she would be okay. But how was she feeling? She told me that she was kind of glad that he was gone, but she missed him too. She explained, in her 7-year-old way, that he was so nice sometimes and she really liked him, but she didn't like him other times because he could be really mean. I told her it was okay to miss him and be glad he was gone at the same time, even though that might feel kind of weird. I asked her if she felt sad, like she needed to cry, and she said, no, but can I have an after-school snack? That's my girl. We had an epic snack and then settled back into our non-Mike life routine without missing a beat. The next morning, when I woke her for school, I noticed that she hadn't wet the bed. I got her off to school and went back inside and wondered what I wanted to do with my day. Since it was a dark, rainy day, I decided to hang out online and reconnect with some friends. Before I had a chance to log in, though, the phone rang. And it was John, the manager of the McDonald's that Mike had worked at, wondering where he was. Now, I had worked for John as a teenager, and we remained friends. I told him what happened, and he said, oh, well, a no-call, no-show is grounds for termination, so I guess I'll fire him then. We laughed. It was good. I guess you won't be going to Burger College now, I joked, and we laughed even harder. It was very good. Oh, he said, interrupting our happy mood. He just walked in. Guess I better go tell him he's fired. Talk to you soon. Okay, bye. That was surprising. I didn't think that Mike would have still been in town, and I wondered where he had spent the night. Not out of concern, but out of curiosity. I didn't let myself dwell on that, and instead I put him from my mind and went to play on the internet for a while. It wasn't very long before there was a knock at my door. Wonder who that is. I slid the chain across the door and opened it just an inch. What do you want, Mike? I said coldly. I think you forgot some of my clothes. I'm missing my Vikings t-shirt and some other things. Can I come in and look? No, you can't come in. Pretty sure I didn't miss anything. Well, go look, he said in a demanding voice that irritated me. And I said, you don't get to boss me around anymore, pal. If I come across your things, I'll send them on to you wherever you're living now. I'm busy. I closed the door, and he banged on it again. I opened it back up, just an inch. Please just look for me clothes. I'll be gone, I promise, he said. Fine, wait here. I checked the closet and didn't see any of his things, but I saw the laundry basket and realized I hadn't gone through that when I packed up his stuff. I took the few pieces of his clothing out of the laundry and put it in a grocery bag. I opened the door again and said, I will trade you this for the key to the building. Although I had had the locks changed to my apartment, he still had a key to the main door of the building, and I didn't like that. He swore under his breath, but he took the key off his keyring and handed it to me. I gave him the clothes and said goodbye, and closed the door and turned the deadbolt quickly. I listened at the door to hear his footsteps going down the stairs, and then I breathed a sigh of relief. I went back to my computer and sat down. I didn't even have a chance to press a single button before I heard something hitting the kitchen window. What on earth? I looked out the window and saw him standing in the alleyway, waving up at me frantically. I opened the window and yelled down to him, "What do you want now?" "There's an envelope on top of the cupboards with all my legal paperwork. Can you get that for me? I really need it." "Fine. Jeez." I found the envelope and went back to the window, and I moved the screen aside. But before I could drop the packet down to him, he said, "You better not have any more of my stuff in there or I'll be pissed." "Oh, really?" Now that pissed me off, so instead of gently dropping the envelope down so he would catch it, I tossed it frisbee style out the window, and it landed right in a puddle. I laughed in surprise. I didn't actually mean to do that, but these things happen. He yelled a few very choice swear words in my direction, but I closed the window rather quickly. Before I knew it, he was back banging on my door again. How did he even get in the building? I figured he must have just wedged the outside door so he could get back in if need be. I didn't even open the door a crack this time. I just yelled through it, "What now?" "Let me in. I want to look for more of my stuff," he barked. Yeah, like that was going to happen. "No, Mike, go away. Just go away and don't come back this time." He swore at me some more and kept pounding on the door. "Go away right now, or I'm calling the police. The phone is in my hand, and the last thing you need is another arrest. Get out of here." He swore again and stomped off, swearing and punching the walls as he went down the hallway. When he got to the end, he decided it would be fun to pull the fire alarm. The building alarm screamed into life with an ear-splitting, obnoxious noise. Oh, wonderful. This will end well, I thought. Max started screaming in unison with the alarm. Perfect! I picked him up and covered his ears. I figured the fire department, which was located in a building about half a block down the street, would be here momentarily, and they'd turn off the alarm. Sure enough, the trucks pulled up out front, and I opened my door when I heard the firemen coming down the hallway. I told them what had happened, and they said to hang on a sec and radioed down to someone. A moment later, several police officers were at my door to ask me to tell them what happened. I explained the situation, and the male police officer left while the female one stayed with me to take a formal statement. I gave her Mike's story, and she looked at me with alarm and asked if I wanted to consider a protective order against him. I said, no, I just wanted him to go away. She took a lot of notes and said that she'd pull up his record at the station and that if they found him, they would arrest him for falsely pulling the alarm. He'd probably only spend a night in jail, but maybe that would cool him off and he'd just leave the next day. I told her that I didn't really care what they did with him, I just didn't want him back here. I mentioned the outstanding warrant about the forged check, too, just to make sure they knew. She nodded and said she'd make sure that was noted. I signed a bunch of papers, and as I was walking the officer out, Brian, the landlord's son, was there at the door. He asked what was going on, and the officer answered. He said, yeah, he knew Mike, and he would keep an eye out for him. I apologized to Brian for the disturbance, but he told me not to worry. He's like, it's not your fault. It's all right. But it sure felt like it was my fault. About an hour later, there was another knock at my door. Great, who is this going to be? I opened the door, and it was the female officer from earlier. She said that they had found Mike outside, sitting back in the trees at the edge of the parking lot, eating some McDonald's. And she said that they took him into custody, and he'd have to see the judge in the morning. Who knew it was illegal to purposefully pull a fire alarm when there is no emergency present? Mike knew that now, though. She gave me a pamphlet and a business card for a domestic violence advocacy group, and she urged me to call them. I told her that I didn't think this really qualified, but she said that she had read his arrest record, and given his history, it most definitely qualified. She was concerned that I didn't share this belief, and told me that if I didn't believe it now, I'd end up believing it later, perhaps after it was too late to get help. I said I would look into it, and I promised, and she left. Now, I thought about this for a while, but remember, back then I knew nothing of narcissism, or any other cluster B type personality disorder. I thought he was just a jerk, but I didn't feel like I was being abused. I called the number anyway, and they referred me to a local counselor with experience in these issues. I called him and made an appointment. He said that he could see me the very next day. I did this more out of curiosity than anything else, but I was willing to hear what he had to say about it. I certainly had been through some shit, whether or not it qualified as abuse. I got Maggie off the bus after school and had my mom over for dinner. Nothing fancy, but I just wanted some company, and I had to tell her the whole story, of course. What a day. I didn't go to Mike's hearing the next morning because I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to risk feeling bad for him or suddenly losing control of my brain and wanting him back or anything confounding like that. I also didn't really care if he stayed in jail or not. The officer that I had spoken to when he was arrested called me in the afternoon to let me know that he had been released, but he had been given community service for the false fire alarm with a hefty fine. I hadn't pressed charges against him for the check incident, so there was no other reason to hold him. She asked if I had contacted the victims advocacy group, and I told her yes, and that I had my first therapy appointment that afternoon. She was pleased to hear this and told me to call her if I had any other trouble with Mike. She said the judge had cautioned Mike against coming back to this apartment or contacting me, but I would have to file for a formal order of protection to make sure that was backed up legally. I said I'd let her know when and if I decided to do that. My new counselor's office was only a few blocks away, so I walked down there for my afternoon appointment with Mac in tow. The counselor was a portly old man who was very warm and welcoming, and I felt instantly at ease in his office. After we introduced ourselves and exchanged some pleasantries, he asked me why I was there, and I said I wasn't really sure. I explained the recent events with Mike and that the officer seemed to think this was some domestic violence issue, but I didn't really think so. I see, he said, as all therapists do. He asked for some background information about my relationship with Mike, and as I told the tale, with every passing moment his eyebrows raised higher and higher up on his forehead. That was something to see. When I finished my tale, he simply said, "Oh dear, we have some work to do, don't we?" with a soft smile on his face. I guess," I said, unsure of the correct answer. He chuckled softly and said that he had a spot for me and could start seeing me twice a week at a reduced rate because of my financial situation. He only charged me $10 a visit. I think he just felt really bad for me or something, but regardless of that, I liked this guy a lot, and I agreed to begin later that week. I bundled Mac back up as it was a cold autumn afternoon and got him snug into the stroller, and we walked back home. I waited outside at the school bus stop to meet Maggie. I felt good that day, strong, like I was doing something positive and healthy instead of fretting about what Mike would flip out about next. I didn't realize how bad the whole walking on eggshells thing had been until he was gone and I didn't have to do it anymore. It felt so good, and although I was still sad and upset over the sudden breakup again, that pain was mitigated by the relief. Cognitive dissonance yet again, the twin but oppositional truths in my mind, both taking up residence at the same time. I'm so sad he's gone, I love him, but I'm so glad he's gone, I feel so much better without him. We're going to take a short break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the reasons why it's so hard to give up a relationship like this, and why so many people stay stuck in them for far too long. Be right back. Welcome back. There are a lot of reasons why the ending of a relationship like this is far more traumatic than a quote-unquote normal relationship. We'll get deep into those in a later episode, but for now, I can explain what I was feeling during this time. This was the 4th or 5th time that we had broken up so far. Each time had a certain air of finality to it in different degrees, but what I had learned up to this point was that things were never really over. If I just waited a bit, eventually he'd come back around and we'd have another chance. There was a line from a song by Matchbox 20 that resonated with me then that went, "It's getting so creepy just nursing this ghost of a chance, the fiction, the romance, and the technicolor dreams." And that was it, really. I knew that eventually he'd show up again or call or email or something, and I would have the opportunity to take him back should I so desire. That knowledge made it a little harder to fully let go and heal because instead of focusing on building a life completely without him and eventually finding someone else to love, I kept the door to that possibility closed because I wasn't sure yet if I wanted Mike back or not. Now, I know that sounds crazy. Why would anyone want another round of a relationship like this? But I was under the belief that he could change. Everyone can change if they want to. We're blessed with the ability to recreate ourselves in any given moment. Through introspection and self-analysis, we can decide on behaviors that we don't like and change them for the better whenever we want. Sometimes we may need some help doing that because it's not as easy as it sounds. Maybe Mike just needed some help, and he could be that good Mike permanently. I was always so sure that eventually Mike would realize how his own behavior was driving this devastation, not me. Maybe he'd come to understand that being good Mike brought the best results, and he could make the conscious decision to be that person. I've always considered myself a militant optimist. I don't give up easily on anything or anyone. I didn't understand narcissism and related disorders. I didn't know that someone who is truly narcissistic cannot change. They cannot get better. That fact ran contrary to everything I believed at the time. I felt that if anyone in the world could help Mike change, it was me. And as angry as I was at him for hundreds of valid reasons, I still wasn't ready to give up completely. This time around, I figured that he'd make his way up to Massachusetts to see Jessie. Her husband would take care of that problem, and Mike would come crawling back to me, apologetic and hopefully having learned an important lesson. I just had to wait. If it sounds as though my emotions and thoughts were all over the place as you're listening to this, you're right. I was terribly conflicted. I was angry with myself for those thoughts that would pop up about wanting him back. I hoped that starting therapy would at least help me to focus better. I knew for sure that, as Melissa Etheridge had said, my heart hooked up with my mind, and they were last seen headed south. In my mind, I was preparing for the worst, but hoping for the best. The worst case scenario was that Mike would come back and I'd have to deal with an ugly confrontation, and probably have him arrested and get that protection order. The best case scenario was that I would be able to move on from him and stop craving his presence in my life, and that he would just go away and stay away. However, the other side of me felt the exact opposite. Best case, he'd come back to me, and quickly. Worst case, that I'd have to learn to live without him for good. I hope this therapist was good because I was a mess. I didn't know if he knew it yet, but he really had two clients, smart me and stupid me. Maybe he could put us back together, and we could work as one united front and do what was best for me and the kids. Now, Bob, Jessie's husband, and I had formed a curious friendship, and I learned a lot about Jessie. From what I could see, Mike and Jessie's relationship, if they ever chose to have one, would be far more volatile than ours had been. Jessie wasn't willing to compromise like I was, and stupid me said, "Ha, see, she doesn't love him like I do. He would see that." I very stupidly believed that sacrificing things that I enjoyed was a good way to show Mike how much I loved him. Mike had apparently wanted to move back south to Florida with her, but she absolutely refused to leave her kids. I knew that Mike saw children as liabilities and problems, so that was going to cause some tension. Jessie had a lot of friends, and she was even on a dart league and very active socially. Now Mike hated that with a passion, and he would certainly never have tolerated her going out with friends, with or without him. But Jessie's demeanor, to her credit, was more grounded in healthy behaviors than his, at least. She wasn't about to give up her activities to accommodate some needy, whiny bully of a boyfriend. Bob and I both knew that if they tried to date in real life, it would end quickly and in tears. Neither of us were worried that anything lasting would form, and we agreed to just let it run its course and see what happened. Bob was firm with Jessie, but he gave her options. He told her that she was free to go be with Mike, but he was keeping the kids, the house, the car, the bank account, etc. If she wanted to walk away from all they had built, she was on her own. But he also said that she could end it with Mike and they would work things out. He didn't want a divorce. He just wanted Mike out of the picture for good. Bob gave her a choice. As it turned out, Mike did eventually make it up there and they had their weekend together. But Jessie went right back to Bob and dumped Mike for all the reasons stated earlier and plenty more. But mainly, she just wanted to have her cake and eat it too. I hope someday she realizes how lucky she was to have Bob for a husband and to have dodged the bullet that is Mike. I don't think she sees it that way, even to this day, but that's a tale for another episode. So, there I was, on my own again with the kids, trying to organize the shattered pieces of my world. I wasn't lost in any great depression or anything, as I knew he'd be back eventually. I was just weighing my options, making pros and cons lists, and trying to invent more pros than cons, even though there honestly weren't any. I was content to watch him go out in the world and suffer all the miseries that he could find. I hoped that would show him that life with me was better than life without me, and maybe he would come back a changed man. All the people in my life were telling me the same thing. I should be glad he's gone. Sure, they knew that it hurt, but it was so much better without him there. I shouldn't ever tolerate that kind of behavior, and he would never ever change. He was evil, he was an idiot, he was mean and terrible. I understood what they were saying, but they also never saw the good side of him, I would argue. He had a terrible childhood, he has issues. He can work through them if he tries. I gave them every excuse for his behavior that he had ever given me. They weren't buying it, though, and I think back at this point in time and wonder, was there anything that they could have said that would have made me wake up and run away from Mike for good? And the answer is no, there really isn't. Although I definitely appreciated all of the care and concern, all I really wanted was for someone to tell me how to fix him. Now, had I understood narcissism or any of the problems he had, I would have already known that you can't fix this. And maybe I would have had the strength to give up on trying, but that didn't happen. In the next episode, I get into it with my therapist and anticipate Mike's return. Does he hold true to his pattern or not? Tune in to find out. Until then, thank you for listening and take care.
People ask me what my secret is, I just smile and